Christopher Balkaran, the host of the Open Minds live show right here on YouTube, folks. We had to move inside because it's just too cold. But if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe, folks. You know, there's a lot of chat right now about Canada as a 51st state. Now, folks, I know some of us are questioning why this is even a conversation, but I just want to remind folks of a few things. One, this actually isn't a new conversation. This has been a conversation since the Alaska Purchase back in the 1800s by the United States. Canada has routinely been asked whether or not it makes sense for it to join the United States as a 51st state. Mel Hurtig even wrote a book while I was in university that we studied, exploring Canada as a 51st state. Now, while the Trump administration seems pretty hell-bent on Canada as a 51st state, there's a couple things that are pretty surprising. One, it's interesting to me that Trump is really interested in negotiating with Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party, which by the existing opinion polls are at 16%. Even if they were to choose a new leader, it's most likely the case that Canada will have a completely new government as soon as the next election is called. So even if Trump is really pushing forward for Canada as a 51st state, why would he negotiate with a government that's on its way out? That's the first really interesting point. But second, no one seems to be talking about the sheer administration of Canada as a 51st state. Not only would the United States have to extend its defense and military here, we border three very different oceans, as an example: Pacific, Atlantic, and the Arctic Ocean. And if the United States is to build up their military capacity in the Arctic, that would be a massive undertaking from a logistic military project plan. But also, forget military, folks. Let's talk about us as a first state. There are education and social programs that are extended to the provinces. We as a country would then now need to build our own education and social programs as an entire state. We have a federal government here in Canada for a reason, and 10 provinces with, in some cases, quite unique social programs specific to those populations. And the fact that we would now need to have similar education and social programs for the entire country wouldn't actually make as much sense. And then you think from a logistic perspective in terms of our politics, how would that work for our Congress and our Senate? How would we actually make this work? Would we have a say in Congress and in Senate as well? How would this work when it comes to presidential elections? Would they have to come up to Canada? And where in Canada would they come to make their stop? It wouldn't be enough that they would come to Toronto or Ottawa. They'd have to go to BC. And what about Quebec and the French Canadian population? How would they interact with Canada as a 51st state of the United States? And also, besides all of this, how would this work with the Indigenous population? We being the British Crown, negotiated treaties, number of treaties with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. And to this day, there are modern day treaties that are being negotiated between Canada and Indigenous communities. These are just some of the topics that I think we should start talking about. But to me, it talks more about the administration as a whole of Canada as a 51st state. To me, I don't understand why we're not talking about that. Instead, it seems like the media is very focused and fixated on the just absurdity of Canada as a 51st state. But really, we have to look at the nuanced discussion. We can't talk about it at a high level. We actually have to start talking about it logistically. And when we start talking about it logistically, it actually might give Americans more pause for second thought, because the amount of government that they would have to explode to have us as a 51st state would be out of this world. We have to remember too, the Trump administration has put in place DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. You want to talk about inefficiency? Talk about expanding the bureaucracy 100-fold to have Canada as a 51st state. I would argue that if this were to happen during Trump's presidency, the administrative costs would be so astronomical, the bureaucracy of the United States would balloon beyond recognition just for the sheer management of Canada as a 51st state. And then what does that do to Trump's base, who wants to see limited and smaller government? Folks, this is in fact the conversation we should be having, not whether or not Canada should be a 51st state. It should be, practically speaking, does it actually make sense? And I would argue right now in the United States, given the temperament towards expanding government being very critical, I don't think it's actually matching the temperament that exists in the United States. They want smaller government and limited government. Expanding the government to administer Canada will balloon government administration beyond our wildest dreams. But let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Do you think they're purposely not talking about the administration of Canada as a 51st state because we're too busy focused on, talking about Trump and Trudeau and getting lost in the kind of politics of everything? The logistics and the administration matter that much more, folks. If you like this content, definitely hit that like button, subscribe, share, tell all your friends. Let me know what you think in the comment section below.